right, and welcome to the February Combined Game Developer Meetup and GGA meeting. So thank you all very much for coming out. The one or two of you who made it out tonight. So thank you all very much in the rain. Generally, we'll have announcements at the start of this. I'll introduce myself. I'm Andrew Greenberg, Executive Director of the Georgia Game Developers Association. We're going to save the announcements to the end. Tonight, we are live streaming on part of our on Beam Pro on the GGA channel. So if you know folks who want to be here tonight but couldn't because the room's too crowded, have them check that out. And it's my pleasure to introduce one of the co-leads of the Game Developer Meetup, who's going to introduce tonight's speaker. So, Joe from Puzzles by Joe, the master of clutter himself.
Just going to be very quick. I learned a little while ago that this man started the oldest or longest running Atlanta game dev meetup prior to the existence of the GGDA. And it's been over 10 years, a little over 11 now, right? Yeah. So I felt that I needed to commemorate the thing. No, it's something you supposedly will like.
Oh, yeah, nice.
And
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah.
And with a little further ado, this is Brad Merritt of Cartoon Network and Atlanta Game Dev Meetup fame. Enjoy his talk.
Thanks, buddy. So, hey, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. This is the best turnout we've ever had. I hope no one is a fire marshal. So just keep it on the DL if you are. So tonight we're going to talk about how to create TV-friendly game IP. So who am I and why should you listen to me? I'm Brad Merritt. I've been making games since 1998. Started with like small Flash games and things like that. Eventually worked up to large multiplayer Unity games. I've been with Cartoon Network since 2003. As a developer, like working directly on a game, I've worked on over 50 games for Cartoon Network. And I also work as sort of a game design director with lots of external vendors. And for that, I've worked on well over 200, probably 300 games by this point. In my time at Cartoon, I've had the privilege of working with a lot of really wonderful cartoon properties and working with a lot of really, creative show creators and some really smart, insightful show executives who make these decisions. And so, I've hopefully learned a lot from that. And I'm an indie dev too. I do make games on the side where I do everything but music because I'm terrible at it. I get Chris Rickwood to do all the music, right? So this is some of the games that I've worked on for Cartoon. As you can see, it's a bunch of games, a bunch of different properties. I've been here a long time, so it's a lot of old stuff. This is a list of just all the properties I've got to work on, and so it's interesting because I always think about like why did this show get approved? Because for every show you see on the air, there's like 10 that don't get approved, and so it's just something I've always thought about, and so I'm going to try to impart some of that information to you. So tonight, like what I want to do is there's some interesting things between show like this TV. When I say animation, just know I mean television show animation, right? I know so many people are animators and they hear the word animation and that's what they think of. We're going to be talking about TV show animation. So we're going to talk about like what makes a good TV show animation and also like what makes good game IP and like how those things kind of conflict with each other and like why a lot of licensed games are bad. So I'm going to try to choose some really good examples to prove my point, and then hopefully we're going to solve all of these problems tonight, so we won't have them anymore. So I'm kind of treating this talk as a bit of a rough draft, so I welcome your feedback. And one of the things that I value more than anything, I know when I go to see lectures, is just something insightful. I really hope that I think even if you disagree with it, right? Just let me know if I'm doing a good job. So we're going to talk about like what you can do when you're making your game IP to make your game IP more appealing, right? And we're going to be kind of answering that question by identifying the friction between game IP and animation IP. So I'm going to be using the word IP like not abbreviation. What do you call it? What do you call it when it's two letters? Yeah, sure. I thought an acronym actually had to be a pronounceable word. Initialism. Thank you. So IP is intellectual property, right? It means like when you make a game, it's your characters and it's your world and it's your story to some extent. It's all the things that you make for your game, right? And as soon as you make it, it's copyrighted, right? It's yours. People can't copy it. Well, they can, but then you can sue them. So like what is good IP, right? Clearly good IP is IP that has, really visually engaging characters, that has like really emotionally engaging stories, that has these wonderful fleshed out worlds, right, for your characters to live in and for your audience to immerse themselves in. But when it comes to a good IP, there's also the medium that you are executing that IP in. And this is like one of the challenges that I've found over so many years is good game IP and good animation IP, they go different directions. So we're going to talk about what's right for games and what's right for TV. We're going to figure this out. Okay. So when I first started this talk, it was me whining about how hard my job is. It's one of those things where licensed games and games based on like kids television shows, they're often not very good, right? And it was basically me just trying to make everyone understand why all of our games could be better. And it was identifying these friction points. And so I decided to maybe try to change that into something a little more productive than me just crying about things, and try to impart information to you how to make things better. So everybody's IP starts out with kind of these same elements. Like we were saying, like characters, story, and hopefully merchandise. And it's like television's goals are like go this way, and games goals go in a totally different direction. So we've got all the same components often, but the way that they're executed is so different. It makes them really challenging. And just generally, like if you're working with IP holders, it makes things really difficult. Just because IPs have lots of rules, there's lots of layers of approval. Like there's a risk reward working with IP creators, right? Like being here at Cartoon Network, I've got to work with some of the most creative, amazing people in the world, and some of them are just a fountain of wealth of creativity and information when it comes to games, and some of the people don't care at all, and some of them are kind of challenging. There's kind of a joke that every like if a show has two characters, the creator wants us to make Toe Jam and Earl, and if it has three characters, they want us to make Lost Vikings because those are like the only games they can remember. And then of course, like your game has to fit into some sort of larger marketing plan, which frankly you're usually not the sole focus of. And a big thing too is like deadline trumps everything. So we're gonna figure out how you can make IP and do all this stuff to other people. So like just to talk about a little bit about like working with games and IP, I made this sort of diagram of what just sort of like the game development process is like. So this is a lot of game development process. And then when you work with IP, it's a little more like this. So we're gonna figure out like how we can meet halfway and make things a little bit better in the future. So the first thing I want to talk about is silhouettes, right? And I'm sure all the animation people in the room and all the people who worked on games are like, we talk about silhouettes all the time. You don't know what you're talking about, right? I mean, you'll hear about making silhouettes at every GDC talk and all these other things. But this is where game development silhouettes start, or are here, right? Like you may think you're going crazy with silhouettes, but you're going crazy with silhouettes in a box. And I kind of point to the Pop Toys as a really good example of this. It's like, yeah, you're pushing silhouettes, but if it doesn't fit in the box, it isn't going to happen. And so, and I get this; it can be a huge challenge, right? And it definitely depends on the genre of game that you're making. If you're making a shooter, like everybody's collider has to be the same, or that's not fair, right? If you're making some sort of story-based adventure game, you can be a little more flexible, but this is a challenge, and it's compared to the way television show animation pushes silhouettes is extreme. Like these are the kind of silhouettes we work with. Like her, yeah, forget getting her in a game. Like that's um, and even when you try, we had a game that we did for Adventure Time, and we're like, well, what if we like kind of coiled her up to look like that snake from Cuber? And but then like it didn't feel like the character anymore, and so it's just there's these kind of silhouettes. They're just so they're so wonderfully different when you see them on screen, but when you try to put them in a game, you have to do this, right? And luckily, like you're gonna see a lot of Adventure Time in this because Adventure Time is the best property for video games ever made. And it's great because yeah, BMO's not that big, but it still works, right? And so we have a number of games where BMO's probably a little bigger than he should be. The Lich is probably a little shorter than he should be, but it still works. My favorite example of nutso silhouettes we had to work with um, is from this show called My Gym Partner is a Monkey. And so, I mean, you can just see like that's and the rules for this character is literally like her body had to be going off the top of the screen and her head had to be coming down off the top of the screen. So when things like this come up, right? You're limited to basically the game genre you can work with, right? You're like, I want to make a really awesome multiplayer action game with this. You're not going to, right? And so we have to kind of like pop toy awry um some of our properties. So like when we did like sort of multiplayer shooters and fighting games, we very literally made them into sort of these very vinyl figure-esque kind of toys, right? So it's like, how can we find like Adventure Time again? Generally, is very good sort of mid-level silhouettes. They're nice and different, but they're not so crazily different that you can't make games out of a giraffe's head that has to be sticking up in the ceiling. So let's talk about actual character design. So when you design a character, if you want it to go to the animated world, every line you make on that character costs a bunch of money because that line has to be drawn 24 times a second, right? And so when you look at these characters, they do such a good job of they're very simple, right? But they're flat colored, but at the same time, they're delineating all of their limbs and stuff really well. Like, here's her head, here's her hand, here's his head. His arms terminate here. Like his top and his body are different colors. His legs are nice and far apart, so he can like animate and look nice and spindly. Jake's just all one color, right? But they do all the line work. They do such a good job of making it super super simple but very unique. And like what animators see when they see this is like, oh my god, my life is going to be so much easier than if you delivered like what's called too many belts, right? So I think you would have animators like sneaking into your house and stabbing you in your sleep. Um, if you did this, yeah, exactly. And so it's you know, so you can see like this is the crazy complicated design, and this is you could put this in your game, right? So you can see which one is more like animation friendly if you have this desire of like one day my show is going to be an animation. But it's funny, of course, it started out simple as simple animation, and then went to this. Okay, this is a total tangent. I found this picture on the internet, and it was like, oh my gosh, isn't it awesome? And I'm like, this is the worst character design I've ever seen in my life. It's just like a mess of nothing. You can't tell who anybody is. All right. So I'll stop picking on Transformers. So I want to talk a little bit about just sort of the theme of characters. And one of the things, that video games are always sort of start at is this sort of like lone wolf. You're all alone against everything. And don't get me wrong, Samus is my favorite character of all time. But it's this silent protagonist that is walking around in an empty area not talking to anyone, right? And you just get so much of this, like, it's always just about the one hero running around, right? And of course, there's wonderful sort of counterexamples to this, games like, Beyond Good and Evil and Ratchet and Clank and things like that. So it's like, wherever I'm pointing out bad examples, you can think of a good example, right? It's like Ratchet and Clank, there's two guys, they go around, they have banter, they're very cartoonish. Coincidentally, they just had a big animated movie made. So things like that are important, right? It's like the when bad guys have underlings in movies, right? They need someone to talk to. They need somebody to say all of their evil plans to and all the things that they're thinking about. Because if they're just walking around by themselves in their head, you're not communicating anything with your audience. You can't really pull them in as emotionally. It's like, what was Master Chief's childhood like? I don't know. He never really had anybody to talk to it. So maybe if somebody was there, he would have opened up a little bit. So it's good if you're creating sort of this IP that you hope to become a show one day. Give your main character a buddy. Give him somebody to talk to. Give him somebody to open up to. And if you notice, like, a lot of shows, like often shows that start out to be about like the one hero against everything, they usually become more ensemble over time, right? But like if you think about like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Angel or any other Joss Whedon show, they usually start out with this really powerful single protagonist, and they morph into these ensemble shows. And it's one of those things when you have ensemble shows, it gives a wide variety of people something to latch onto, right? Somebody might be like, I'm not really big and tough like Buffy. I'm more like bookish and smart like Willow. And so you create this wide variety of characters for people to kind of latch onto. And that's a great thing about shows. I already said that. The explain stuff. Also different personalities can make different things happen, right? Where it's like, if you've got the one sole character and they're the biggest, baddest character in the world and they never back down from a fight, then what happens when you want somebody to back down from a fight, right? That's when you use your comedy sidekick to make something go wrong and then you back out of a fight, right? It just gives you more tools narratively when you have more characters, and then you're not making your character do something wildly against their values, right? It's like Master Chief's not going to back out of a fight, but, his little buddy might. So I also think it's kind of interesting you can take like powerful abilities that characters might have and kind of spread them between characters, and then again, like, remove them when you want, right? You can be like, you can't jump right now because your jumping buddy is gone. You can't jetpack because jetpack boy's gone. I love if you watch Adventure Time a lot, like I do. There's this great thing Finn does all the time where he just jumps out the window because he knows Jake's going to catch him perfectly well, right? And then there's that awesome episode where Jake loses all of his powers and Finn just jumps out a window, right? And it's like all of a sudden you've got this really interesting limitation because you've got these multiple characters and they have multiple abilities and they complement each other. And it's like they work as a unit, and then you can just like break one off and be like, nope, now you go do something different and you go do something different and we'll go on an adventure and get your powers back and come back. And it's like you do that in games with stuff like where Samus gets all of her powers taken away, right? But it's just her. And she's just aggregating these things together. And I also think it's interesting, usually when you give a player something, you don't want to take it away, right? But if you're hanging out with Jake and then all of a sudden Jake has to go do something, you're not really taking stuff away. You're just having a little detour. And so, yeah, bad guys too. Same thing. They need buddies to talk to. So I want to get a little serious for a second.
Drink water.
There is an affliction that faces many video game heroes. People don't talk about it. I'm not talking about spikes. And I'm not talking about whirling saw blades. Oh, where's my music? Come on. There we go. So this affliction, these heroes, they work to save us. They do all of these things. But when the world is saved, where do they go? Do they have a place to call home? No, they don't. I knocked this together really fast. So, most video game characters, they don't have a home. They don't have a place to live. They don't have a place to go chill after they save the world. I mean, I guess Cloud kind of has the tower, but whatever. So, when you're building IP, you can almost think about it like a sitcom, right? Give them a place to always go back to. Give them a place to chill to. You know, give them a Kramer to come in and steal food out of their refrigerator. You know, these are like television tropes, and I mean, granted, yes, for a large part, they are done for budgetary reasons, right? You don't want to, you know, when we make games, we're like 75 locations. It looks awesome on the back of the box. And again, like animators want to stab you. So you kind of find a place for them, you know, at least give them like a base, right, to go back and chill out and have things happen. So again, like, I know making a zillion things looks good on the back of the box. I know this is a very, very powerful story element, but just don't blow up their home like in the first 15 minutes of the game. I know it's a great way to establish how bad the bad guy is, but maybe let them have a home for a little bit. And so, you know, like so many things, when shows have like, you know, places to live or cars people drive, they really become characters unto themselves, right? They become these really powerful, iconic representations of the entire brand. And, you know, it's like Finn and Jake are awesome, but you can have these wonderful locations that become just as important as your characters. And again, like, they just evoke strong emotion, you know, where it's like, if the treehouse is in trouble, you would be seriously emotionally attached to that, right? If someone wanted to go chip the face off of this, you would be very emotionally attached to that. That's Steven Universe, by the way. Yeah, exactly. So, and one of the couple things, like, when you're creating areas of interest for your IP, right, be flexible. One of the things that I do see from time to time, this is one of the lessons I've sort of gleaned by looking at shows that don't make it, is oftentimes IP creators, they're way too specific with the worlds they create. They're like, this is a temple, and ogres live here, and they worship this god, and this happens every weekday, and on Sundays they do this, and nothing else can happen here. And you're like, okay, I guess we'll use that for a story when we can get around to it. But it's better to think of it more in the sort of Dungeons and Dragons style of storytelling. Yoink, sweet dice. Anyway, so I don't know if anybody here has ever run like a Dungeons and Dragons game, right? But when you create locations, you try to be like, okay, there is this crazy desert and all this weird stuff is going on. You see lights at night and you hear all these crazy sounds. Who knows what's going on over there? And that's what like a lot of good IPs have, right? And if you look at Adventure Time, they have like the wastes, right? And all kinds of crazy stuff happens in the wastes. And they don't really specifically say where or tie it to places or how close it is, which is actually kind of funny. I don't think my friend Zach's here, but sometimes when we deal with people, like Adventure Time has that wonderful sort of obtuseness to its locations where anything can happen.
And we had some people working on the game, and they were like, we need you guys to tell us how many meters is it from Finn's treehouse to PB's castle. I'm like, dude, that information doesn't exist. I'm like, well, can you get us in touch with the show creators so they can tell us? Like, man, nobody knows. It's like if you tried to make like an actual map, it would be made up, and 2 weeks later somebody else would make up a different one. All right, let's talk about faces. So this is a place where video games have a hard time, especially 3D video games. But, you know, something like 900% of your brain is dedicated to processing facial information, right? And so having like funny faces or just really emotive faces is a very important part of cartoons. And, you know, if anybody in here was in any sort of animation class, I'm sure you did like walk cycle, draw a bunch of silly faces. Those are like one of your very first assignments, because silly faces are super duper important. And, you know, games generally don't even have them, you know, and usually the characters are too small, or you're looking at the back of their head, or you're looking out through their eyes. And, you know, again, like, remember how I said we were going to solve all these problems tonight? So I don't really know what to do about this. I mean, I still think technologically 3D animation is very far behind 2D animation for expressions. This is about the most expressive game I could think of. But even games that like wonderfully started out, like Earthworm Jim was like 100% like, this is going to be a cartoon, like period. Right, when they started developing it. And as amazing as like everything they did right, like Earthworm Jim's still teeny on the screen, right? So you can't get awesome things like this in a video game, right? It's like, that is hilarious. If you see it animated, it's even funnier. And so, you know, and when games try to do things with faces, if you notice, it's like, it seems like we've made a lot of progress, but I think we're kind of hiding how little progress we've actually made, because usually characters are like stoic and angry and they're not that emotive. You know, you're not going to see Commander Shepard make like a weird, silly, like face to be funny, right? And he can't, even if you wanted him to. And so that's why, you know, when we have a normal smile, you know, it becomes this. You know, and if you want to have like a crazy face, it becomes this. So I feel like games are cheating a little bit with how good facial expressions have gotten, you know, because you can see when you try to push, it doesn't really work so good. All right. So let's talk a tiny bit about cinematography. Okay. Here's what I know about cinematography. I don't know jack about cinematography. Right? Every time I learn something a little bit about cinematography, all it does is tell me how little I know. I highly recommend going and watching the Every Frame a Painting YouTube series. It's amazing. It goes through all these different films, and it tells you like why Michael Bay movies look like Michael Bay movies, and it's not explosions. Okay, it's explosions, but it's some other stuff too. So every time I look at this stuff, it blows me away of how little I know. So when you just take one small aspect of cinematography, like a shot, like how do you frame a shot? There's lots, right? There's all these different shots. But basically, all we ever use is full, right? You want to see your character, and you want to see everything they do in the world, and you want them in the middle of the screen, and you want them to see all the things that come at them. And it's a very, very limited scope of cinematography. I mean, we use POV a lot, right? Point of view for first person. And it's a very, very narrow range of cinematography. And, you know, all of these animators, right, they go to school and they break their necks, and they're having to learn animation, one, which is incredibly difficult. But then on top of that, they're learning all of this cinematography stuff that games rarely have to worry about. I mean, granted, there's exceptions, but, you know, it's not a lot. And again, like, there's more stuff like angles there's just all this stuff that's really amazing aspects of cinematography that games almost never touch on. Oh yeah, POV. Yeah, we use POV cameras all the time. Yay! Again, then there's like movement of cameras, the way they move, the way they zoom, the way they pan, the way they tilt, like so much stuff. So figure that out. So I just gloss over that because it's one of those things where I see how little we use it, but I know so little about cinematography that I don't feel qualified to really talk about it very much. Just go watch some videos. So merchandise. Man, this kind of goes back to your characters being simple, but anywhere you can find merchandise like figures, or if you can have cute, cuddly characters that you can make stuffed animals out of, that's always amazing. Any sort of clothing, especially if your character has a really iconic piece of clothing, like a big star on their shirt, or something like that, for people to really grab onto, that's very, very attractive. It's cool to have a really unique weapon or a unique wearable, right? If you think about like Ben 10 and his watch and things like that, they're really, really great for merchandise. And so are vehicles, right? Everybody wants a HISS tank from G.I. Joe. Granted, those were made to make toys. All right, so this is my insight I'm probably most proud of, so I'll share this secret with you. So who's that? Who's that? SpongeBob. This is what I call merch face. So can you take your character's face and just stick it on the same color they are on a flat background and have it super easily recognizable, right? Like merch face is amazing because you can just, it's very cheap to make. You can make all this amazing merchandise like shirts and backpacks and frisbees and hats, everything, right? One of the games that I think is a really good example of not checking all the boxes to make good IP, but checking this box hardcore is Angry Birds. Angry Birds has amazing merch face. But if you look at it from a lot of the other lenses that we've looked through, it has crappy character development. It has terrible silhouettes, awful silhouettes, right? It just has no story. It has no places. I mean, pigs are bad guys. So they shopped Angry Birds around to every animation studio trying to get a show. It's no coincidence that Rovio had to form an animation studio to get the Angry Birds movie made. Because I'll tell you what, like animation executives, they're very smart and they're very insightful. And they may not be able to tell you, like how I'm trying to tell you, like what makes a good IP and a bad IP. They just know it instinctually, and like every animation executive is like, no. Because Angry Birds, it doesn't check enough boxes. Buddy, does it check merch face? All right, this is the hardest part. So we do tons of research at Cartoon Network, tons. And one of the things that we find over and over again is action shows are great and kids love them, but they only love them once. But comedy shows, people will watch them over and over and over again. So we like comedy more than anything. Even if it's action, we want it to be 51% comedy, 49% action. So this is another one of those things where, television really goes one way for comedy, and games go another way for comedy, and hit a brick wall because games inherently just aren't very funny. So here is what I think is the biggest problem with games and comedy. As a game designer, you want to train players to just have a little more expectation than what you're giving them, just a little bit. So when you're making a game, you want to be like, here's a monster, learn how to fight him. Here's another monster, learn how to fight him. Here's another monster, you're getting better. Boss fight, right? And boss fight is kind of the final exam for all the thing you've been teaching them, right? You're not throwing them any giant curveballs here. You're maybe thinking about, maybe make them think a little bit laterally, but not a lot, right? But if you were going to make comedy, right? Comedy is about throwing people curveballs. So you'd have monster, 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 ham sandwich. So comedy is about like setting your expectations in a certain way and then zigging when you thought I was going to zag, or zagging when you thought I was going to go straight. But anyway, the point is it's about subverting your expectations, right? And subverting somebody's expectation is bad game design. And so as a result, like, you can do funny things in games, you know, but generally comedy is achieved through writing or physics silliness, right? And physics silliness is just subverting your expectations, right? Like, you thought it would be, if I do this to the mic, nothing happens. But if I did this and it like plowed through everybody and made a hole in the wall, that would be hilarious, right? You know, like, there are some interesting games like Octodad, right? Is writing this interesting cusp between bad and funny, right? Because like they purposely make the controls so bad it's funny, but not so bad that it's bad. And I think that's a really interesting area to sort of to experiment with. And this has been something like we have been talking about at Cartoon Network and Adult Swim for years. And it's funny because like non-game people have these ideas where does everybody remember like Phil Kinseben from Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law? He had like one eye patch, so he had bad depth perception. And people kept being like, we should make a game, it's a shooter with Phil Kinseben, but your aim is terrible. And I'm like, sounds funny. Not sure if it'd be very fun. So when you guys figure this out, just call me. So this is a little bit of a tangent, but this is one of the reasons why I think streamers are so unbelievably just blown up, because they've taken games and made them funny, right? Like Skyrim by itself is not funny, but watching like the My Brother and Me guys play it is hilarious, right? And it's not the gameplay, it's like the layer they put on top of it. So one of the sort of internal rules I have for myself is I want IPs to be visually funny. I want to take like a show that we're getting on Cartoon Network, and I want to turn the sound all the way down and just watch it and be like, what is going on? This looks amazing. Like the whole time, right? It should just be visually funny at all times. Not all times, but significantly visually funny. Like that crazy Finn face, right? Like if you saw that with the sound off, it's still hilarious. So let's talk about genre. I don't think it really matters. I think like if you want to do a good IP, it's all about execution, right? Like you could make a point-and-click adventure game that's wonderful for a television show and one that's terrible. And I think you could do the same thing with a shooter or, you know, a racing game or whatever. I don't think it really matters. Just as long as you've got all of these strong checkboxes that you're really getting into your brand. One thing, however, that is important, and this is, again, something that we see from the things that we watch, are standalone, like, sitcom shows versus serialized content, meaning, like, a long arc of story. Serials just don't play well. They don't get good ratings. It's very hard to ask people to come and watch things all back to back to back when it's on air. Maybe this will change a little bit in the future with all the binge watching on Netflix and things like that. But for now, if you wanted to get a show on television, having a IP that works with standalone stories, you know, where at the end everything's the same, works better, right? There's some wiggle room in there. Like, again, look at Adventure Time. But again, like that show probably went off the rails from time to time that people probably wouldn't be really, very happy with. But serialized content will hurt you. So I'll give you some secret kid knowledge. So like I said, we do a lot of research at Cartoon Network. And we are very, very careful about what we make for kids. It's very important to us to make the best content for kids that we can. And one of the interesting things that comes up at Cartoon Network all the time is people are like, oh, kids are so much mature these days. You can do this older skewing stuff. They'll totally get it. And what research shows time and time again is, no, they don't. Kids do not grow up any faster. Like, there's this word that we use around here all the time that's called like aspirational, right? Like a 10-year-old wishes they could be doing what a 15-year-old is doing, but they cannot do it, right? But what does change are kids' attitudes. And so there's been a really interesting shift in kids' attitudes since I've been here at Cartoon Network. Like when I started, right, it was like all this like Bruce Timm, you know, like Justice League action, punching stuff in the face, like all that kind of stuff was very, very popular. But kids these days, they're just a lot more inclusive, and they have a lot more, just sort of, they have a different attitude on heroes. So, like, one of the things that we see, and we talk about a lot, is used to, like, when we were kids, and I say we, you guys are kids, like, you wanted to be the hero, right? You're like, I want to be Batman. I want to be Superman. That's not what kids are after these days. Like, what we hear kids say is, like, I wouldn't really want to be friends with him. Would you want to be friends with Batman? He's kind of not cool. I'm trying to keep this, you know, G-rated. But it's an interesting attitude. And again, like, so I don't know if you've ever heard this term, but, you know, there's Gen X and there's millennials, and we in the industry call kids coming up now, like, plurals, because they're so used to, like, a plurality. They're used to a plurality of technological devices to consume content on. They're used to a plurality of races. They're used to a plurality of genders. They're super, super inclusive, right? And they want to see that stuff reflected in the content they consume. So when you hear people say that, like, kids are growing up faster than ever, they're not growing up faster than ever. Just their attitudes are shifting to become more inclusive. And just remember this, like, be friends with the character more than be the character. So, wrapping this up, so let's say that you made the best IP ever, and you actually get it sold to a studio. There's a lot of legal stuff that can happen. You know, if you make a wonderful IP, you know, be prepared to set it free if you love it. You know, if you ever go into this thinking that you are going to maintain like 100% control over your IP will probably never be picked up. Like if you have an agent, oh yeah, that's the other thing. Get an agent. Don't ever just walk up to, you know, some studio executive and be like, I got an idea. He'll be like, get an agent. But you're going to have to sacrifice control to some extent, like always. I can't even imagine, you know, it's like superstars of animation give up control, right? It's like the creator of Sam Jack made Sam Jack, and then the next thing he made, he didn't maintain 100% control of that, right? No one does. So when you make your wonderful IP, you know, just be prepared to set it free. So I wanted to make a bunch of examples, but I'm running out of time. I brought it up, but I think Ratchet and Clank really checks a lot of these boxes really, really well. They're buddies, they have banter, they have amazing weapons, they have a home base, they have all these great like peripheral characters. You know, they've got like a father figure they hang out with. It's pretty amazing, and they recently got an animation, which I thought was pretty cool. And again, like, I think he really embodies that, like, I would want to be friends with him. Like, he's just a cool guy, but he makes mistakes. He's self-reflective. So yeah, I think it's a good example. So that's it.
So Brad's been really gracious to give us a little bit of time for questions and answers. So because we only have the one microphone, we're still streaming live. We will be repeating the questions on in. I see that there are questions already popping up. I was going to see it, but let's go ahead and jump right over here. Go ahead, Mr. EQ Publishing.
Oh, yes. You said you do a lot of testing and a lot of research on the animations. I was wondering what kind of research you do on the video games.
Okay, so the question was, we do a lot of research on animations. What kind of research do we do on video games? So we do a significant amount of research on video games. I mean, I would say our number one worry when we're testing is usability. And, well, actually, okay, wait, let me back up. That's not true. So testing for video games differs depending on how mature the property is, right? So, like, let's say a new show just came out, right? And we just made a video game for it. That video game has more than one job. Its job isn't just to be a fun video game. Its job is to be a fun video game and educate all these people about who these characters are, what is the world they live in, who is the bad guy. So, so again, like, usability is still our number one concern. But then depending on how mature the property is, we'll test a lot whether they get it. Like, do they get the property? Do they understand the stories? Do they understand the characters? Difficulty is always a big one. Let's see. And also just always watching for, how kids will do things you don't expect them to do in a million years, right? It's like you make this bright, shiny path of sparkles and particles, and they're like, great. So, you put a wall there. So, yeah. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, so your talk seems to be sort of geared towards video game makers who then want to transition into having their IP picked up for animation. What about, or what thoughts do you have on people who want to contract and make video games for pre-existing IP? So if Steven Universe wanted me to make a game for it.
Right. Yeah. So his question was, what advice would you give people that want to make video games for pre-existing IPs? If you wanted to make a game for Cartoon Network, what would be the best way to do it? So we work with a lot of vendors, and we're always looking for new vendors. So this is a really easy question to answer. So for one, we want to see that you have made a good game, and finished it in a reasonable amount of time. We go to people on the App Store quite often that just make really good games, and we're like, wow, that was great, like small little quick fail game. How long did it take you to make? And they're like, 5 years. We're like, sorry. But then we also just look for, do your sensibilities really align with Cartoon Network? Is it just chopping off heads and metal music and dark-winged angels? That's probably not what we're looking for. If you make something a little more boppy and fun and kid-like, that's important. Another important aspect is just showing in some way that you can emulate other people's styles. It's surprising how many artists are phenomenal but can't just copy somebody else's style. And that's something we struggle with quite a bit. But really, it's just like, make something good, make something kid-friendly, and show that you can emulate other people's styles in a convincing way.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is it expensive to create a game?
So the question is it expensive to create a game? So the answer is, like, a game's, it depends on how the scope, how big the game is, right? It's like, I'm sure a bunch of people here made a game in a weekend a few weeks ago, and it didn't cost them anything but sleep and sanity, and so but at the end of those couple days, they didn't have a very big game, right? So it's like, a game can be very small and very inexpensive, or it could be giant. It's like Grand Theft Auto 5, right? It's about the biggest game I can think of, and it costs what, like $100 million or something, right? Yeah. So yeah, it made $1 billion, so that's pretty good.
How long does it take to make such a video game?
So, like a giant, like Grand Theft Auto kind of game. So I mean, a game like that, it would take years, and probably like 1,000 people, I think, worked on that game for what, 3 or 4 years probably, and take into account they made that game before, so they weren't starting from zero. They were starting from a very, very strong base of having made that game type before, right? So the answer is, it can be anything, right? It could take you, and the weird thing is, some games can cost nothing and make $1 million, and other games could cost $1 million and make nothing. And so it's a gamble, right? Like any other business, it can be as big or as small as you want, but it's always a gamble of how much it's going to pay off. Yes.
So when you're pitching animations to studios, some studios are now asking that you go ahead and build your own audience online through YouTube, and then they'll decide whether they want to pick it up or not.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any suggestions along those lines for people who are independent and just making their work, on their side?
Yeah, I mean, a big part of getting a show picked up is the creator, and how much is the creator willing to work hard, right? It's just like if anyone here has ever hired a game developer, the number one thing you're looking for is like, have they made a game? Have they made it through to the end? Have they gotten through all the not fun parts of making games and done it to the very end, right? And a lot of times that's what studios are looking for. They're also, I think, trying to get it to, like free focus testing almost. But a large part of it is just like showing that you have the mettle to really make a show. Because let me tell you something. Those show creators, you think video game developers crunch. Dude, those show creators are unbelievably hardworking. And the amount of stuff they have to crank out in a very short period of time would blow you away. And so, I mean, there's been shows where the creator cracks, and they just have to cancel it because the show creator can't deal with how much work it is, And so, a lot of it is just you have to show that you have the mettle to stick it out and do it, put up with people telling you how much you suck, So let me share, like, my mentor is this game developer in Australia. He made, like, Ty the Tasmanian Tiger and stuff. And he always told me that you've succeeded when people you don't know hate you for doing what you love. Yes, sir. Yeah.
You talking about all this actually reminded me, and I wanted to ask you, what of this applied to either, frustrations or, happy thoughts about Fusion Fall?
Fusion Fall? Yeah. So I didn't work directly on Fusion Fall very much. Maybe I can talk all those guys into doing a talk one day about this. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
So kind of a follow-up to his, when he wants to work with established IP and he's got the game making skills, and you're shopping around for those guys all the time, how much of the writing burden would you allow them? Or how much of the writing burden would you prefer to keep, and how much of the writing burden would you like to see affect game mechanics?
Okay. So he was asking how much basically is the writing burden shared between Cartoon Network and the game vendors, and how much can that influence mechanics? So again, it varies greatly. It depends on the vendor. So we have a couple writers in-house, and they are, experts on certain shows. Like they kind of take certain shows, like this one gets Adventure Time and this one gets Steven Universe, and they know those properties like nobody else, except for maybe the show creators. And so it really depends on the vendor. Like, does the vendor have, do they want to do it? And are they good at it, right? And there's always some checks and balances there, right? Because 9 times out of 10, when people are very enthusiastic about the property, they want to, like, make a new location or a new character or something like that, and that kind of stuff. Usually we have to run by show creators. But we do have some vendors that we trust, like, implicitly, and like they can do almost no wrong, and if they write, we let them do almost whatever they want, right? With some very light checks to just make sure they're not, going crazy off canon or anything like that. And those guys, we actually do let them make new characters from time to time because we trust them so much. So yeah, it just all depends on the strength that the vendor shows. All right.
Are there companies that are just building IP? I mean, they're not building a show and they're not building a game. They're just building an IP.
Yeah, marketing firms.
No,
Gosh,
they're building character development. They're building.
Gosh,
they're building.
I don't
mapping.
Not that I have seen. right? Because all of these show creators that I see, they're unbelievably passionate people. And, you know, they're very passionate about IP. They're very passionate about animation. I mean, like, just as passionate as we are about video games. And so I've never seen that, right? Like, and that's the thing. Like, the people that we want to bring on at Cartoon are these very passionate, very hardworking show creators that are, you know, this is their life's blood. They're totally dedicated to it. They definitely don't want to, like, make it and pass it off. So, I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this. I think the closest thing would be like the people that make like Man of Action. They're sort of an aggregation of artists, and they made like Ben 10, and they made Generator Rex, and so I'd say they're about as close as you get, but they're still, you know, very passionate about what they do.
Now, if it's not for shows, what about games?
Not that I've ever seen. Again, I think it's the same thing, right? Like, game creators are very passionate people. They want, you know, they want to make a game about all their D&D characters from when they were 10, right? And they've devoted their whole life to that. And so, you know,
very specifically, Naughty Dog comes the closest in that when they feel they're done with an IP, they do sell it.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess he was saying, like, there are show creators or IP creators that get done with IP and sell it because they want to move on to something else that they're really passionate about. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know. Yeah.
Getting agented, tips, tricks, silver bullets that make people on the internet hate you.
Gosh, I don't know. So his question was how to get an agent. I really don't know. I just, you know, puzzle you'll have to solve for yourself. Sorry. Yes.
So through your job here at Cartoon Network, do you work directly with animators like Rebecca Sugar and those kinds of people, or do you work through like proxies?
Okay.
To talk about it?
So the question was, do we get to work directly with show creators like Rebecca Sugar, or do we work through proxies? So the answer is both, right? Like, so sometimes sometimes we do just work through proxies to get like really simple approvals on stuff, right? Because like I said, those show creators are super busy. And oftentimes they have like a orbiting satellites of people to prevent you from talking to them and distracting them. But then there are vendors we work with, like the vendors. There's a vendor named Grumpy Face, and they are, you know, they know Steven Universe like nobody else, and you know, they work directly with Rebecca Sugar, and like, you know, I think, you know, they're a fan of her, and she's a fan of them, and because they make such wonderful products. And so, yeah, both sometimes, yeah. Yes?
We have an answer for the agent question.
Oh, agent, all right. An answer for the agent question.
My answer would be to shoot me an email. gmail.com, and then I'll send you a list of references to find an agent.
All right.
Yeah, we have representatives from one of the animation groups here as well tonight. So.
Awesome.
All right, one more question.
You already have,
Yes, the question.
you can ask me tomorrow.
You mentioned in regards to like 3D animators and things like that, but what about like storyboard artists or like the other field of ranges for like professionals? Like I'm in sound, so like sound designer or something like that. Like how would it work and like what are the rigors for those?
To get into games or get into animation?
Like to get into games, because you know you can program for the sound systems for the game,
Right.
Or anything in that range. So like how does it work for those guys?
So the question was, you know, how do you get into games as like a storyboard artist or a sound person? So there are definitely people that can answer this question better than I can, because I mean I came from programming and game design, so I just make games. What I've seen sound people do before is they'll dub like game trailers or gameplay footage. So like find a bunch of footage of Zelda and redo all the sounds. And it's really compelling, and it's some of the coolest stuff I've seen, because a lot of times people will take it in a wonderfully different direction, you know, and it can change the whole tone of the game, right? Just like it could change, the music changes the tone of a movie trailer. So I've seen people do that before. As far as storyboard artists go, I mean, you're boarding action, right, to a large extent, and so I think just showing that you can board, like, you know, this is where like cinematography could come in, right? Like, show how you're gonna cinematography is a game, right? Like, figure it out. Do something interesting. Yeah. All right.
All right. Thank you, Brad Merritt.
Thanks.
On touch. So we appreciate everybody having made it out here today. Obviously, there are more than one or two people in the house tonight. The ESA recently came out with their most recent study on the game industry. Georgia, by the ESA's number, now ranks 7th in the country for the game industry. A lot of representatives from those various studios here. Really happy to see Blue Mammoth here, Zavient, Bride Kim, Games That Work, Digital Anvil, Kerchunk, a lot of others. So make sure you meet all the folks around here. A lot of people doing a lot of great game development. One of the things we've done tonight is to live stream this via Beam, and that is now going to become one of the special values we offer our members. You'll get the chance, as we build our channel up, to show your games on Beam. The Beam community will get a first look at games coming out of Georgia. You'll get a chance for good feedback from an audience you otherwise never would have had. We're going to do our next live stream a week from today, 7 p.m. on February 28th. Our Indie Cluster rep, where are you, Ron? Ron Jones, hiding way over by the pizza, not saving me a slice, is going to be handling that stream. So you want to talk to him not only about streaming games on our Beam channel, but being a part of the Indie Cluster at Siege and other events. So again, February 28th at beam.pro/GGDA. The next GGDA meeting is going to be March 14th at Game Skinny, one of the very good game press media groups here in Atlanta. We'll have the location for that up at ggda.org in the very near future. So it's going to be on how game developers can work more effectively with the game press. So I think it's something we all really need a better look at. The Game Dev Meetup that Brad and Joe run has their next meeting March 21st up at Dave & Buster's. If you haven't signed up for that meetup, apply. It is primarily a professional group. So GGDA obviously has academics and professionals as a part of it. That is more of a focus on the professional side. But it's still been a great group. And yes, older than the GGDA and older than Siege. Let's see. Our Columbus chapter is organizing the Columbus Interactive Media Festival in this summer. Their meeting is this Friday for those of you on Beam or those who want to drive down to Columbus at Columbus State University in CCT 307 at 5:10 p.m. That's a pretty exact time. 5:10 p.m. All right, a couple big things still coming up. We've been talking about the Best in Georgia Award, so I'm saving that for last. I know a lot of you are really interested in that. But we have another prize we're giving out, which is we had a lot of you answer our membership survey, and that came with a $20 Steam card to one member. Awarded tonight, and I just got the text from our Associate Conference Director, Abby Jocelyn, who rolled the percentile dice and came up with Booker T as winning a $20 Steam card. And for our members, we've got Siege flyers. Take them for yourself. Pass them out at GDC. Pass them out in your neighborhood. Put them on cars at nightclubs, whatever. For our members, we're also having a page on the website starting pretty much tomorrow. We're going to be announcing highlights for member projects. For instance, Sovereign Studios just went live with Ethereal Legends on Steam for sale today, so check that out, and you'll have a link for that up there. I'll be pushing my own Greenlight campaign for Noble Armada. We'll have a lot of other things from other people up there. A great way to support other Georgia companies. Before we get to the Best in Georgia Award, I wanted to bring up Drew Casente from Jennifer Ann's group because they've got another great game development contest I wanted you all to hear about. From the man's list himself, Drew.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. So I'm Drew Casente. I live here in Atlanta, and I'm the founder and executive director of Jennifer Ann's group. It's a nonprofit organization, 501c3, and our focus is on the prevention of teen dating violence. Since 2008, one of the things that we've found that's been really effective is to produce video games through an annual game design contest. Challenging developers, can you create a game about teen dating violence without using any violence in the game itself? We just last week launched our 10th annual competition. First place is now $10,000. Good. Okay? Because that's what my heart does when I think about. Okay, I'm trying to be a good steward with these donations. But the contest has grown every year. We have people enter from around the world. We've had winning games from Argentina, Ireland, India, Thailand, Belgium, Canada, everywhere. but I'd love to see some from the Atlanta area. So this year, the theme is consent. We know that consent has been in the news over the past year or so. There have been a number of incidents, I'll call it. But we think there's a need for us to have this conversation about what is consent, because it can be complicated, but not if you break it down into all the elements. And video games are so good at handling complex, nuanced topics. So the challenge is to create a game, a serious game about consent. We've broken it up, though, into 2 rounds this year. So really what you do first is you just give us your pitch. We're going to pick 10 finalists. They then will have till June 1st to actually create the game and be eligible to win the $10,000 first place prize. We also have second, third, and a door prize. But you have until the end of February to give us your pitch. There's just 4 questions that you answer. And I think the thing that matters most is coming up with a really clever idea. And so those 10 ideas that we think that are the best will then have several months to go ahead and actually create these games. And you'll get all the technical information and everything. All of our games are completely free. So if you want to see any of the past winners, feel free to go ahead and check them out. You can play them online. They're downloadable to smartphones and tablets. JenniferAnn.org is our website. If you go there, just follow the links. But again, the idea is create a game about consent. And we know that games are capable of doing something like this. So thank you.
All right, and now to the Best in Georgia competition. So at the recent Game Jam, Global Game Jam, there were 5 Georgia locations this time. So we had a number of submissions, one from each of these sites. We had an excellent team of judges. Ron, you want to come up here and talk about it? We're an excellent team of professionals from a variety of different companies. The idea, again, was that it wasn't just what you did at the Game Jam that mattered. We asked you to give us a proposal on how you'd continue the game and then to do more to the game. So on February 10th, the various contestants submitted their finals to our judges. Oh, you got the pleasure of doing it. Ron's hiding in the background, pulling the strings. Yeah, behind me pulling the strings. All right, so I'll turn it over to Ron Williams.
Waiting for Pat to get up here. All right, guys, so Andrew just told you a little bit about what the Best in Georgia competition was. Out of the 5 sites here in Georgia, we took the top game nominated by each of those sites, and we got to spend a little bit of time just communicating with them about what the goals were for this competition. We had 5 levels of criteria for this game, including things like technical complexity, originality, and things of that nature. And we had some really cool original games come out of it.
Hold on, introduce the judges. We got to build the suspense.
Wait, well, I'm going to introduce the 5 games, and then we'll go on to the judges. So the 5 games that represented each of their sites were Take the Stage from SCAD Atlanta, Wave Dash from Georgia State, Voice Ball from Georgia Tech, Alter Gravity from SCAD, and Dead Reckoning from the Guildhall. And some of these games were really amazing. They had great introduce new features like voice-controlled games. We've had board games and things of that nature. So it was a lot of different things that came out of this. So round of applause for those top 5 finalists. All right, and so I want to introduce the judges that we had to help with rating all these games on the criteria and help us to pick our winners. So we got Pat Ballin. We got
from.
I work at
Introduce
American
yourself.
Gaming Systems. I went to SCAD twice, and with a very good friend of mine, I also run something called CreatorForge.com.
Zane Nakvi, I work over at Xaviant.
John Claudis, I'm the owner and do pretty much everything at Small Box Games. We're a card and board game publisher.
I'm Blaine. I'm an ex-game journalist and current indie game PR marketing specialist for an agency.
And are there any other judges here?
We have Aaron Molina in the back.
Who's from?
He is, he's the director of engineering at Xaviant. He was also a judge.
We got David Riddle, who is a 3D artist from High Res. And Chris Rickwood, who, if you guys don't know him by now, you probably should know him by now. So yeah, thank you guys for all volunteering your time and helping us to pick this. So. All right, and without further ado, we will announce the winner. So out of the 5 sites that participated in the Global Game Jam, the 66 games that were created here in Georgia over the Global Game Jam weekend, and then the couple of weeks that were put into the game after that, the winner of the 2nd annual Georgia Game Developers Association Best in Georgia is Alter Gravity from SCAD. Is anybody here from... No? Yeah, that's a little bit of a hike, but for you guys tuning in, congratulations, and thank you all for participating in it. There were a lot of great games. It wasn't an easy decision by any stretch of the imagination, so congratulations to all of you, and congratulations to the Alter Gravity team.
For any of the other team members, for the other teams, we'll be sending out feedback later this week, just a kind of summary of responses. And feel free to come and approach any one of the judges or organizers and can talk to you. Love to meet some of the teams as well.
And the winners will get thousands of dollars in professional services as well as a place to demo their game at Siege. So before we get into the networking, we have two more things. Two.
Yeah, one more thing. Out of all the announcements that Andrew did about the upcoming events, there will be an IGDA Atlanta meetup in San Francisco at GDC. So for those of you who are going to be at GDC this year, stay tuned to the Facebook page and the IGDA Atlanta Twitter, and we'll be announcing details as they're made available.
Thanks, Ron. And the other Ron Jones, you wanted to make one quick announcement. You can't go hide back by the pizza again and not bring me a slice yet again. The pain.
Everybody, I'm sorry this room isn't big enough, and I didn't have enough pizza, and it's really hot. We've never done this before, so we didn't really know it was going to be like this, so next time it'll be better.
That was great. Brad. All right, Ron, close it out.
What's up, guys? My name is Ron Jones. I'm the coordinator for the Indie Cluster, and I just wanted to give a quick announcement. Some upcoming conferences that we're trying to go. Well, if you don't know what the Indie Cluster is, it's Atlanta's indie game traveling booth. So we travel to different conferences, do nonprofit events, all that kind of stuff. So just look it up, indiecluster.com. But upcoming events, ECGC, which is a game conference in North Carolina, and Dig South Tech Conference in Charlotte. They're both coming up in April, and we are possibly trying to make moves to go to either one or both of them, hopefully. So if you guys are interested in that, definitely talk to me, sign up on the website, the newsletter, get in contact with us somehow. If not, if you guys aren't really interested in that or able to come out, we're definitely going to partner some way with MomoCon. So be looking out for that, and see you then. Thanks.
All right. Usually we'll take more announcements from the crowd and the like, but I know folks are getting warm and wanting to move about, so we'll take a bit of a break. If you're looking to hire folks or you need more people for your team, we can probably have a group for that over here after we take a break. But thank you all for coming out tonight. One more hand for Brad and Cartoon Network. Thanks everyone on Beam. We'll see you next week.